This is episode 158 of the Gold Squadron podcast. I'm your host, Dion Morales, and today I'm joined by Ryan, Alpha X-Wing Intergalactic Lore Master 2000 until defeated, Staniszewski.
Yes, I have claimed the title. Zach Matthews didn't lose, but he had to move on to other things for now. I've claimed the title.
You've brought honor to the squad because I lost, so by 1 point, but still lost.
Yeah,
I'm saying, man, those questions
you went through your own redemption arc.
I did
good.
Awesome. So we're gonna start today on probably some not as let's go here first. Some not as fun news, but something that I wanna just go out front because I know that there's people live who are wondering about it. So I want to just get it out there. So if you guys haven't heard, the Gold Squadron Paintcast has come to an end. So Luke has decided to end casting, and we're going to start by reading his statement. I think that's probably the best thing to do first, is go ahead and just read down his statement, why he's stopping, and we'll give a little commentary on it and then continue the show. So this is it's actually, if you want to read it yourself, it is on our Discord in the announcements section. So it says, "Hey guys, it's with a heavy heart that I'm choosing to walk away from the Paintcast and the larger X-Wing community. I recently had a discussion related to the current political situation, which has garnered me a significant amount of hate mail. Hate mail where someone has told me that I am human garbage. At this point, I have no intention of continuing public engagement with a group of people that can't respect other people's opinions. I understand that this only applies to a minority of players in your X-Wing community, but sometimes life is unfair. I really do love the game. I really do love the time and the memories I have gained while hanging out with all of you, but the anger at some of you is ruining the process for me. Please don't blame anyone, and I appreciate you respecting my decision. Remember that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Break the cycle." So, if you guys are wondering, like, what happened here, just to kind of give he had a discussion, I believe it was on the Fly Better Discord, and like he said, basically people got really upset. And as you guys know, here on GSP, we try as much as possible to not discuss politics or hot button issues, just to focus on the X-Wing. And just as for the reaction that he got, I know that there was some opinions from people like, well, maybe he should just keep doing the podcast anyway. You know, there's a loud minority. There's all these different ways you can react to it, but I think the thing that I like to focus on when it comes to like an individual situation is that everybody reacts to everything in a different way, and for his sanity and for what he wants to do, that's the reason, like one of the biggest reasons why he just doesn't want to do it anymore. And I could not take the opportunity to say thank you to Luke for all the time he did spend on the Paintcast. He worked really, really hard, and just the contribution that he made to the community for people painting. I know he got a lot of people into painting and thinking about, X-Wing in another creative way. Of course, all the amazing prizes that he made for you guys to do that we gave away on stream. And he has actually like a ton of ships that I need to go pick up and stuff like that. But I have to say thank you, and I have to say that he'll be missed for sure. Ryan, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, echoing a lot what you said, just really appreciate Luke. Always remember in his Paintcasts, he was always trying to, get the message across. Anyone can do this. Pick up a paintbrush, pick up an airbrush, do you. Whatever you feel is what you want to go and achieve, go do it. It'll take time, it'll take repetition, but it doesn't take anyone particularly special to be able to paint well. It's just a talent you can develop and learn through trial and error. Don't be afraid to fail. It's about how many times you can get up from the failures and push through to your new successes. So I know Luke was a huge proponent of pushing that type of message forward. So keep going with that, everybody. Even though Luke may not be doing the paint cast at this time, don't give up on painting.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep it going. Keep being creative.
Agreed. And as for like painting content, I know some people did also ask me, like, Dion, are you gonna like try to figure out? As of right now, I don't plan on like filling the spot or anything like that. I have some other ideas on how to get you guys painting content. So as of right now, I don't know, and we'll just kind of figure out as it goes. So yeah, that just wanted to hit that first, because I know that was something, if you're on our Discord, you did see today. All right, well, let's jump into some other news. Space Jam prizes. I have spent about 8 hours, and I'm about 1 more hour away from fully organizing all of the Space Jam prize information for all you guys. I have spreadsheets organized, ready to I just got to go press print now on envelopes and then sort those. Like, it is, we're close. So if you're waiting for Space Jam prizes, they are in they're processing, put it that way. And then I'll be making posts on the Discord and on Facebook as the different phases of those get finished. So as of right now, I'm just in the information organization stage. And once we have that all released and all in the mail, then we can go forward with planning the next one. Alrighty. Well, today, of course, we're going to be focusing on the Sydney Space Jam, which happened last weekend. I think I'm on a normal sleep schedule again, and we will. We're going to go ahead and just jump into the top 16 lists, and then I want to look at some numbers that I found really interesting, and hopefully that you guys find interesting as well. So let me go ahead and pull up my list of lists, and here we go. We'll do it there. Alrighty, so we're just gonna go 1 to 16. Let's start by talking about our champion, Wouter, out of Holland, and this was an Imperial win. But now, when you hear Imperial win, a lot of people think, of course, the Imperial Aces, but not this time. We have Rack with Ruthless. So Rack is Rear Admiral Sharanu, for anybody who doesn't know the lingo. With Ruthless, Admiral Sloan, Darth Vader, 000, BT-1, and Dauntless. That's 111 points worth of Rack. And 4 TIE Fighters, 4 Academy TIE Fighters. So the idea here, if you guys are not familiar with Admiral Sloan, if you destroy a friendly ship within range 1 to 3, or sorry, 0 to 3 or 1 to 3? Up to range 3. Away from Admiral Sloan, the enemy ship gets double stressed. Okay, the enemy ship gets double stressed, and of course, having those 4 Academy TIE fighters, they're in your face constantly, and even though they're only 2 dice and they're not super modified, a lot of times you're not shooting at them because, Ryan, would you agree that the strategy is to try to take out Sloan ASAP? That way, you don't have to worry about that effect.
As always, yeah, you want to go for the Sloan carrier. We've seen 2 main types of Sloan lists recently emerge. One being this Rack Sloan, beefed out, many upgrades to make it tick with 4 academies. And we've also seen just a base Reaper with Sloan, 2 interceptors, and 4 academies. So easier said than done, depending on which list you're facing. This one obviously has been the most successful thus far with our Space Jams, but going after, say, a Sloan in the Reaper with 6 other ships screening it is going to be a lot harder to do than maybe this Rack. And obviously the player flying the Rack with Sloan has a lot of agency to let you have certain shots.
Absolutely. All right, go ahead, take the next one.
All right, next up we have Eno, who I'd like to see who had the better average result, Eno or Octar Khan out of these four Space Jams, because I feel like Octar Khan's gotten a lot of like the hype and praise about making top cuts and top fours, but Eno has appeared in all cuts as well and gone past the first round in multiple of them. So we can look into that later, but a very interesting variation of Eno utilizing still the Boba Dengar. We have Boba with Fearless, Jamming Beam, Maul, Shield Upgrade, and Slave 1. No other bombs, no illicit, nothing. We have Dengar with just Predator, Punishing 1, and R5 TK. So back to Punishing 1, but then the interesting piece to the list is G4R, G0R, the M3 Interceptor, the new I0 with Jamming Beam. So when I first heard the three pilots that were in Eno's list, I was like, okay, why? And then so I see I think it's a little cheeky, but it clearly worked well for Eno, is Dengar has R5 TK, can decide to shoot even with the Jamming Beam out the front arc instead of a lethal shot from the main Punishing 1 shot, and do 0 damage to G4R if G4R has blocked an enemy ship, and then every enemy ship at range 0 after G4R defends takes a non-defendable crit. It will take a crit. So I0, I assume with this combination, has helped Eno take care of maybe like those I1 separatist swarms or any I1 lists that he can now block even further. If Eno is top on the block game, even with just a small base, that G4R can, get some auto damage through, which is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. When we saw him play in a couple of his games, of course, will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as we get to them. If you are a Twitch subscriber, you can watch them now. He used, I like to call him Gargor, that M3A. He used them almost like bait, because we never saw maybe we saw the ability go off once where it delivered a crit and took off a shield, but like the focus wasn't even using that ability. It was the fear of that ability going off that made people, it almost had like a Biggs Darklighter effect where people were firing at this thing. Of course, he took evade every time, and it took 2 or 3 turns to kill it. And in that time, Boba Fett and Dengar, they're coming in. It was pretty cool to see it used in that fashion, because, of course, if you do ignore it, bad stuff's going to happen. So you don't want to get blocked.
For sure. I kind of equate it to a different type of TN3645 or whatever, who I've dubbed Tina.
Yeah.
Is the TIFO that's like the reverse Ruthless. Like, Tina can take a crit to change your dice to a crit or take a damage or something like that. So like this ship has a bubble around it that says stay away from me and just starts to herd things. It's like one of those tiny dogs herding giant sheep.
Exactly. All right, so our next list here, we talked about him. We've talked about him 3 other times already. Octar Khan, out of Australia, 2 Zealous recruits, 2 Cartel Spacers with Tractor Beam, another 2 with Ion Cannon. It's 7 ships. It's control Tractor Beams. A lot of times the idea is you have just barely a range 3 engagement with just a front line of ships. You Tractor Beam it, you pull it into the range of all the other 6 ships, and you delete 1 in that first turn. It's really good. And yeah, like it was really interesting. Octa, I believe, played... I'm trying to remember. Was it against Wauta?
I think he had Eno.
Oh, he had Eno. You're right. And it was good game. A very, very good game. And it's an efficient list. It's really good. The heavy hitters are those Zealous recruits, and the M3As can put in some work with the Tractor Beams, and of course Ion Cannons are just good. So we've talked about it before. Let's move on.
All right, so coming to a 2-ship list that does not include Boba.
What?
It's not even Scum. It's
Where?
not Dengar Guri, it's not Boba Guri, it's not Boba Dengar, it's not Boba Fett. It's in the Empire with Darth Vader and Rexler Brath. Rexler Brath taking outmaneuver and advanced sensors, and Darth Vader with precognitive reflexes, fire control system, and afterburners. Captain Sebastian flying this list at 185 points. So you have the 15-point bid to make sure these two respective pilots at their initiative go second in movement. If your highest ship in the opposing list is I-5 and they don't have the bid, Rexler Brath and Vader can choose whatever they want to do and decide where they want to go after the opposing list. So definitely takes a lot of patience and knowing when it's time to attack, so you don't because there's always options for advanced sensors and precognitive for those two ships to adjust where they're going, but you still want to leave as many options open as you can. The opposing player does have, and especially if you're facing a list that has a sizable amount more ships than just the two, say a 5 or a 6 ship list, where a few ships can go in, block up close, where it limits that pre-maneuver boost or maybe even the barrel roll. And if they're near an obstacle, that obstacle's already blocking that. So, Captain Sebastian had to make sure that they limit that potential even further. The game that I watched with Captain Sebastian was the first one against the other Rack Sloan player, and there were a lot of times where the Rack Sloan player ended up over blocking some ships, and Rexler Brath just said, "All right, I'll just take a focus from advanced sensors and just run into the first guy," and all these other guys are still in front of him.
Mm-hmm. And that game that we were talking about that was on stream was versus the next person part of the top 8, Niels Valls, running the same exact thing that Wouta was running. They're actually squad mates and practice this list together. So again, that's Ruthless, Admiral Sloan, Darth Vader, Crew, 000, BT-1, and Dauntless on Rack, and 4 Academy pilots. Next we have Ketch.
Ketch was flying the Rebel Alliance using Wedge with Crackshot afterburners, obviously the S-foils, Han with Trickshot and Kanan Jarrus, and Jake with Crackshot and Predator at 197. I'm moderately surprised that maybe could have taken like afterburners or Predator off and fit an R2 crew on Han. I know that's normally stapled to Han in extended format, but still very successful without it, so proved it can definitely still be done. I think Kanan Jarrus is one of the other best options for Han to use. I mean, Kanan combined with R2 is really good as well. Got 2 I6s. Either of them can be backed up by Jake's Focus for additional mods, likely Wedge. So if you're moving after all the I5s because you're I6, even better. Don't have to bid as much.
So true. Now, people at home, those of you watching live, keep paying attention to these lists. We're going to ask you which one's your favorite when we're done. All right, next we go on to LB Sabino, another one of the top 8 competitors with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Scimitar Squadron bombers, 6 of them with proximity mines. I mean, it's got a lot of chunk, right? It's got a lot of health, and once they have that pass and they have those, they can drop those bombs, they can lock up lanes. I'm not surprised that something like this made it into the cut, especially if somebody's been practicing it quite a bit. You get the understanding of how to move, where to place those bombs, and how to play, like basically how to set up that bombing room, because it's not just like go at you and go past you. You want to make sure that you're giving yourself that opportunity to use those the ship ability where you can use a bank maneuvers and stuff. I'd like to pick LG Sabino's brain, and I wish you would have gotten on stream. There was a couple times I was going to pull him, and he was versus a player we already had, so that didn't happen. But really, really cool list, and this is something that I'd be curious to try out.
I would say we're seeing a little bit of resurgence in general from the TIE bombers, from Vecna in the last Space Jam to Sabino, and I think maybe, spoiler alert, a little bit further down we even get more TIE bombers, just mainly because of the proximity mines. I'm actually curious to see mathematically, because this list is obviously extremely similar to the Hyena bombers, the 6 hyenas with proximity mines. Now, the hyenas have 5 health off of 2 agility and 2 attack dice. The bombers have 6 health off 2 agility and 2 attack dice. The hyenas can network calculate. The bombers just have the focus. The bombers have the bank, drop. I don't know. Which one's better?
Experiment. Joust off. I don't know.
That'd be an interesting battle to see them go up against each other. Just prox mines everywhere.
All of them. That's the game that you can't play in person because you don't own enough prox mines.
Need to find that epic friend.
Awesome. So, all right, next one from Brendan Morsey.
Yep. Brendan, who I believe also made cut in a recent Space Jam. Not sure which of the past
he
couple.
was the runner-up for Space Jam LA.
No, that was Bryant. He had Ray.
He did. Yeah. He also did well in LA. Sorry.
He did. True. That is true. I'm not sure if it was the exact list, but I know it was very similar. It was a 5-ship resistance list. This one right now, 3 red T-70 experts with heroic and jamming beam and S foils. Rose Tico with Crackshot, and Finn with Heroic and Perceptive Copilot. I'm actually pretty sure this is the same one because I recall making moderate adjustments to this list to try and fit Pattern Analyzer on Finn. Mm-hmm. Just my own personal opinion, but clearly still works out quite well.
Next, we have Luke Thompson, the first of our top 16 competitors. Bringing a more traditional Imperial squad, we have Darth Vader with fire control and afterburners. Will would appreciate the fire control system. By the way, we have no idea where Will is. We have no idea. If you guys are wondering, where's Will? I don't know. Marcel said he couldn't be here today. Will? Somewhere.
Case of the missing beard.
The case of the missing beard. That's right. Put his beard on a milk carton.
It's very distinctive.
It is. So we have Sunterfell with Predator, and then Echo in the TIE Phantom with passive sensors and Fifth Brother. Just all around really solid squad. The difference here between some of the other ones you see out there is it's Echo instead of Whisper. You have the points to go up to Whisper, but the choice here for the player was I'd rather play Echo. And if you're good at understanding the placements of those 2 bank decloaks, that gets you no more props to you. You did have to pay a little bit more for Soontir versus the Grand Inquisitor, if I'm not mistaken, but same idea.
Yep, this player opting for the higher initiative for the ship that's not Vader or a Phantom, and then going down to the more squiggly Echo.
All right, let's continue here. We have Virgil Hayward.
And if you all remember, Mr. Virgil Hayward was the debuter of Holdo Ray in the LA Space Jam and has now revised this same list archetype. With you still utilizing the base combo of Ray with Rose Tico, Amilyn Holdo, Finn, Contraband Cybernetics, and Stealth Device, with that Fireball with Cloaking Device and an RZ-2 A-Wing with Swarm Tactics. The adjustments were that instead of BB-8 with Intimidation, went to V Maradi for some extra intel on the board, and doubling down on the intel, Ray added Sense. I talked to Virgil after seeing his success in making the cut the day before the actual cut bracket, and said he definitely liked having that dial information, and I agree. That is something that could be pretty vital to this type of list, where not only we're knowing where Ray might need to boost and point the arc or maybe make any adjustments with per se even a decloak, right? Like you can use Sense and V Maradi in the system phase. So those can happen before Ray if she decides she wants to decloak. So, and on top of that, you have more dial information for the Fireball blocking or the A-Wing blocking or V Maradi blocking. So it all helps Ray try and maintain that forward firing arc. For people who are not as familiar with V Maradi, I believe Dion has that card ready.
Yep, I'm going to pull it up right here. So it says during the system, so V Maradi herself, Let's go ahead and pull that up first. So V Maradi says, during setup, after placing forces, assign the compromising intel condition to one ship, and then the compromising intel during the system phase. If the enemy Vi Maradi, because remember now this card belongs to an enemy ship, is at range 0 to 3, flip your dial face up. So once those maneuvers are set, as long as you have V Maradi alive and within that range 0 to 3, you get to look at that dial. If anybody's familiar with the old first edition, Intel Agent, or also we got now Cassian Crew, it's when you can see the dial, it's really good. And then the second part here is while you defend or perform an attack against V Maradi, you cannot spend focus tokens. So if you're putting it on the most maybe the strongest ship that your opponent has, or one that is a threat to V Maradi, it just makes it so that V lasts a lot longer. Which, by the way, if you're not familiar with her, in canon, she is a spy for the Resistance and the star of the Black Spire Outpost books. So yeah, pretty cool to see Virgil make some changes there. Next, we move to Nicholas God, another person who made every single Space Jam cut, but got knocked out in the top 16 every single time. He used a couple of different lists. He used this one the last time as well. Sarasu with Tractor Beam, 4 Cartel M3A interceptors with auto blasters, and 2 mining guild sentries. We actually got him on stream this go around, and it was interesting to see how he played this. He was a big fan of like doing like tactical bumps, of just like bumping yourself, having the Congo train, you come to me, and just using the advantage of having more ships and that tractor beam. Like, he was okay taking unmodified shots as long as Sarasu had a modifier in order to get that tractor beam out there, and then just doing the work. And of course, when Auto Blaster triggers, it triggers. You get that extra die in the bullseye. It was when you think swarm, like the word swarm, like just going around a ship, that's basically how he was playing. It was pretty cool. I definitely would watch that the game that we got once it goes up.
All right, so next we have Gian Vader, or Gian Vader. Not sure what is the correct terminology for that. With Galactic Empire, 200 points. All points spent for a triple Imperial Ace list. Darth Vader with passive sensors and afterburners. Soontir Fel with no upgrades. And then Echo with outmaneuver, passive sensors, and Fifth Brother. So similar to the previous Imp Aces list we went over, except all the points were spent. Vader went passive, and then Soontir, no upgrades. Echo added outmaneuver.
Yeah, outmaneuver is a great candidate on Echo because of how much she can change her arc and the different directions you can come out. Usually you don't think about putting outmaneuver on an Initiative 4. I think Echo is the exception. Then we move on to Chris Borzumato with a Separatist Alliance list, and this looks to be, if I'm not mistaken, this is like the standard Duncan Howard version of the droid swarm. You have 2 Techno Union bombers with plasma torpedoes, 3 Trade Federation droids with Discord missiles and grappling struts. You have 2 other vultures with just grappling struts and 1 with nothing, sitting at 199. I mean, what can you say? It's efficient. You got network calculations. The plasma torpedoes are able to really get that damage into ships such as Boba Fett. I mean, this is a Boba Fett killer. Like, this is made for that. Boba Fett hates Discord missiles and doesn't like plasma torpedoes, because a lot of time it's easy to get like 1 damage on Boba Fett. Well, with plasma torpedoes, that becomes 2 when those shields. So those plasma torpedoes, they're just value. Absolute value. And with the increase of Rear Admiral Sharanu coming, I expect Separatists to continue piling on that plasma torpedo, because we're gonna see Boba, we're gonna see Rack, and you want to strip off those shields ASAP and get to the juicy inside of that decimator.
get those discords going with the crits. One thing to note is most of the time we see the Duncan Swarm, the last grappling strut is put on for 200 points. So Chris taking one of them off to have a 1-point bid, I assume, against other opposing I1 lists, so he can move first and get position and block as necessary, so his swarm doesn't get blocked up.
Excellent. Next we go to Pedro. Pedro, I choose violence, Segara. All right. If you guys know the lore of Gold Squadron, he is the founder of that saying. When I went down to Buenos Aires, shout out to him and his crew. By the way, there were 4 Peruvians who played in or no, there was not 4 Peruvians who played. I think it was more than 4, but 4 Peruvians got in to Space Jam. They all got knocked out in the top 16, but congrats to the team because they had a great showing.
Mm-hmm. So here we have a variation of the Jendon Inquisitors using Jendon with Director Krennic, 5th Brother with the fire control system and homing missiles, 7th Sister with just fire control system, and Grand Inquisitor with no upgrades. So 198 points, and not utilizing the concussion missiles, but instead getting all the Inquisitors with 2 force, 5th Brother with the really devastating homing missile. Grand Inquisitor can still get 3 dice, and 7th Sister's got that potential crack shot out of her entire arc if both force is available.
Yep, really solid. I mean, the Inquisitor platform, it's not actually the Inquisitor platform, the TIE V1, it's just really solid, really defensive, and the abilities now on all 3 of these are they're just really, really good, and they synergize so well together. And next,
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It really is the Inquisitor platform. There's no Barons of the Empire being used right now.
You're right. That's why I called it that. All right, next we have Gabriel Terrano, a.k.a. Gabo, a.k.a. Whisper, using a list that I saw him play when I was in Buenos Aires, so he must have been practicing this for a while. 5 Zeta Squadron survivors with cluster missiles and passive sensors. It's very simple. You got to remember the TIE SF lets you shoot missiles out of your turret arc. You can point it front or back. And cluster missiles, they allow you to, you fire at range 1 to 2, and if you have another enemy ship within range 1 to 2 and in your arc as well, you can spend a charge to fire the missile at them as well. Now, the damage potential in this squad is really, really good. I remember the game I was thinking about earlier, Ryan. It was Gabriel versus Acta, and I would suspect that Acta was one of the few opponents he's played that had such low initiative, because one of the issues that did happen in his game was a lack of use of passive sensors. He needed to use passive sensors more, because there was times where he ended up wasting shots because he took target locks instead of passive sensors and didn't have the flexibility. The key here is having that flexibility of passive sensors, so you might have a target in mind saying, all right, I'm going to go after this one first. Well, you passive sensors, you take the lock. If you kill it, now you're not committed there anymore. You didn't lose your locks. You didn't waste your action. So great execution. Obviously getting all the way up into the top 16. And I know by that time in Peru, just like here, I'm pretty sure they're either Central Time or 1 over, like Mountain Time. Like, they had already been up at a stupid hour for another day, so maybe he was just tired. It happens. But that was one of the matches where it's like, oh man, missed opportunity there. I think he could. I think if he had not, if he had not messed up that game, if he had not made that mistake, I think he would have gone farther. Honestly, just with the list and the other list that you see in the top cut, would have been wrecked by this. Absolutely wrecked.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, that's why a lot of people think that, oh, cool, I can put targeting computer on, my Phantom, but for the same cost, I can take passive sensors and choose my target when it's time for me to shoot after all my friends have shot. That's very important knowledge and flexibility.
Yep, and I think with again we're planning more of these tournaments that we're going to be throwing premier level online tournaments, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Gabriel come back and do really well and learn from some mistakes. All right, next, Luciano Botta.
Bring in the old school, at this point almost, infamous Hatchet Man with Darth Vader, passive sensors and afterburners, Colonel Jenin with Palpatine, and Major Vendor with fire control system, advanced proton torpedo, advanced slam, and OS1 arsenal loadout title, and I can breathe now. So yeah, Hatchet Man resurfacing again. If I recall correctly, Hatchet Man, when it was out, passive sensors was not out yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't recall if old Hatchet Man had a bid, or I think probably had a talent on Vendor, maybe like a crack shot or some 1-point thing. But essentially, at this point, there was 1 point available in this base list to allow Vader to take passive sensors and then utilize the passive sensors trigger when Vader engages to maybe provide that extra barrel roll for that arc dodging potential, even at 200 points. Big hits, big swings. You just can't be in Vendor's arc at any range. Doesn't matter.
Get out. Run.
Mm-hmm. Leave. And he will chase you. He's really good at that.
Yep. So those were the lists from the top 16. It's just really great to see the variety that we're getting. And now we're gonna look at some numbers. Okay, we're gonna look at some numbers. I'm gonna pull them up on my side first. I'm gonna hide them for you guys from a little bit because I want to have a little bit of fun with both you, Ryan, and also the chat. So here's my question.
I haven't seen these numbers
at
all.
You haven't seen these numbers. Okay. So first, chat. I'm curious to know. Let us know. Have a discussion here really quick in the chat. Let us know which of the lists that we talked about in the top 16 was your favorite. And Ryan, I'm gonna give you that question while I get ready on my side. Which of the lists that we talked about in the top 16 just really stood out to you and something that you find really interesting?
I mean, it's not a new list because I think we have seen it before, but I am personally a fan of Sloan. I've always tried to find the correct type of builds to get Sloan on the board because people who know me as generally more of a high ship count anti-ace player, as me running lots of droids. Sloan is always a mechanic and upgrade I look for to utilize, and obviously the winner of this whole event utilizing that super beefy rack with Sloan. I wasn't sure when I first saw this archetype come up in a couple Space Jams ago whether or not the academies can pull the weight enough, but clearly in the current environment that this is a very effective list across the board. I can see where maybe it has some matchup issues against, say, other I1s, high ship counts, that a single ship being double stressed is less effective than, say, one of your 4 or 3 ships in an opposing list. Besides that, as I said, I gave a ton of credit to Virgil, who made the jump, who went 3-3 in the last Space Jam event, jumping up into the cut, making the adjustments to the Ray Holdo list, still utilizing the cloaking device, sticking with the swarm tactics trigger for Ray to shoot at I1 if necessary, retaining the cloak, and then gaining that dial information, which I think was definitely a great variation and option to move towards. Beyond that, the Zetas with cluster missiles is interesting. It's the passive sensors missiles SFs has always been something I haven't been too crazy about myself. But if someone has put in the time and knows exactly how to utilize it correctly, range bands and all, it can definitely be something that can catch a lot of people by surprise, because you're basically looking at 5 A-wings, no boost, but you have flexibility of your shots, potentially a lot of shots, and then I'd be curious to see how often Gabriel had chances to take the passive sensors at range 3. And obviously, I mean, at least if it was me, I would opt to not spend the lock. And then once you zoom into that range 1 to 2, now you already have the lock, and then could just take a focus action. And then have a better fully modded attack. So just out of the top 16, I believe this player actually also, let me look at the standings. This player had also went 5-1. It just happened to be the only 5-1 that did not make the cut. Yes. Cameron. This was my earlier mention to a spoiler of another bomber squad. Now, this one's really interesting. It was only because of MOV and mathematics as to why this one didn't make the top cut, but still went 5-1. This is an Empire list utilizing only three Scimitar bombers, all with prox mines, all with skilled bombardiers. So now those 1 straights and 1 banks can become 2 straights and 2 banks. 2 of them have seismic charges, and then we have a base decimator with patrol leader with Vader, as we know Vader crew's good on decimators, and then this is the fun trick, is Moff Jerjerrod. So those scimitars every other turn can decide to they can all do a boost. It has to be the same boost template, so whether it's straight or bank, it has to be the same direction of a bank. And then those bombers can do that in the system phase. You do a red boost, and then from that boost, drop the bomb afterward. So it's a very cheeky way to really position those bombs exactly where you need them to with the highest flexibility possible. It'd be nice to have 4 bombers in there, but you would probably have to drop from a decimator to an Omicron group pilot. You probably have to lose Vader crew and maybe drop the seismics. Maybe that could work too, but clearly Cameron took this to really good advantage. Vader crew obviously doing some work, I would assume, to help get those Scimitar bomber 2-die shots to still do some damage on top of that, top of the bombs.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and we're gonna start looking at some data a little bit. So this is data trends overall for Space Jams. Of course, there's been other, I know some like individual smaller tournaments that have happened, but the Space Jams have been that premier level play that's been happening over a period of time. So this first chart shows you the representation of each faction going from Chicago to Rome to LA to Sydney. So obviously the more space it takes up, the more percentage of the field that was. One of the things I found really interesting, just kind of looking at this, of course, is we knew that the numbers were low, but to see the drop off of Scum and the rise of Resistance from the beginning to the end. You see that they basically start to switch places there. Most of the other things were relatively, compared to the rest, were even. Separatists, almost a straight line. Almost no change there. The biggest change going with the decrease in Scum throughout it. So just found that really interesting. Now let's go ahead and look at individual numbers per faction. So here is the overall faction performance per event per faction. So we have each faction represented for each one. Now in this chart, lower is better because a higher rank means that you are like, you're 100th place versus first place. So one of the things I found really interesting was that for Chicago and Sydney, it is relatively a cluster, right? On average, if you take the average of every single person who played, their that faction they played and what rank they made, it's relatively close. But for Rome and Los Angeles, the terrible performance of the Republic. Now, here's my question for you, Ryan. Like, the Republic is something that I know that you and I both believe that the Force is just strong. Like, I think I saw your comment on a post the other day, or maybe it was today, where you said people with purple numbers need to go up, up, up. Something like that.
Yeah, it was Farmer posting about like, oh yeah, if rumors are true, we'll still get the points update. What do you want done? And I said something along the lines of things with purple numbers need to be, I don't know, punished, or purple numbers need to suffer. That's what it was. Yeah. Republic, I still think is really good as a base faction. I think what is having their success go down is the points adjustments did limit what the Republic faction can do in their triple ace archetype. The amount of regen they can take and the sense they can take is not as much as it used to be. The standard Obi Plo Rick can't have as many tools as it used to, and I think a lot of people have generally caught on to Rick is just bait. Like, just find a way to catch Obi and Plo. Rick can't close a game out that way. He can only pretend that he'll take damage, and if he has regen, he won't actually take damage unless he dies. And then if you're chasing him, you've probably chosen poorly. I think just most of those AC type players just shifted back to Imperial, because clearly, as we've seen throughout most of the Space Jam, there is a high percentage of success within Ollie's Worlds List archetype. Just pure and simple. If you're bringing Force Aces, your best Force Aces are in Imperial. They're not in Republic. I'm kind of curious as to why Sinker Swarm never really resurfaced. This was all extended. Mm-hmm. It's efficient. It's worked before. It hasn't been super successful, but I don't know why we saw like almost complete drop off.
It's disappeared. There's none.
Maybe it was Boba, because like at least the Vulture Swarm had auto damage in there and it had plasma torpedoes. The Sinker Swarm just had really modified 2 dice, and if we don't think we know with Boba, he just doesn't care against those 2 dice a lot. Like, if he's in the worst situation possible, he has the option to just reinforce, and he could still evade out of some of the attacks. So I think we could definitely see if the points update skews some of the other, because I think if other aces come down, I think we see Republic go back up, because there's an actual argument to choosing those ace archetypes, those Force Aces. So we'll see. We are going to have a new wave coming soon that is going to provide a potentially really strong support platform with the LAAT gunship. We know that the V-Wing and the ETA Jedi Interceptor is on the horizon, and you put Jedi and Interceptor in the same phrase, you have my DEFCON levels at like 2 or 1. I'm like, my concern levels are really high, but we'll see. I just think there's other archetypes and other factions that do what the Republic mainly did competitively before better, and that maybe Sinker Swarm just doesn't have the right stuff to deal with what's powerful in the meta. Sinker Swarm never got hit with any points update. Maybe it just, like I said, Boba or other ships that could shrug off those just a lot of 2 dice attacks, even though we've seen 5As do fine, but obviously Sinker Swarm doesn't have rear arcs. All
right, and this last chart that I want to show you guys is the top 8 faction performance. So now think taking that last chart, but only mapping the top performers, the top 8 performers per faction, gives a very different look to this chart. Because essentially, when I look at the original chart, the overall faction, this is your everyday person, right? Just your average player can expect the same results almost no matter what you play. Unless it was Rome, LA, you flew the Jedi. Bad idea. On average. Now, we get to the competitive level where it shows you, competitively where these ships and factions actually lie, and it just tells a completely different story. Namely, if you look for the best performing factions, visually, you immediately see the difference in the Galactic Empire, in Empire, and then in Scum and Villainy. But the other story that this chart tells, if you look at it trending over time, is the decreased performance of Scum. It's slow, but when I first put it together, you see that bars start raising, meaning that the rank is going up in number, which you want the number to be smaller. So I'm curious to know, there was no massive drop off. Well, I guess there was some drop off. We saw on the chart, the first one, that there's less people playing Scum. But is it because people are starting to figure it out? Like your average player is starting to get better at playing against Scum? What do you think, Ryan? Some reflections on that.
You're mainly speaking to how good Scum did, but then petering off and coming back up in Sydney, right?
Right.
It's honestly hard to say. We've had a lot of speculations that mainly focused in on Boba a lot. I haven't looked at all of Sydney. Boba seemed pretty absent in the top cut, right?
It was just one. It was
just one? Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, people are finding ways to beat Boba. Boba's still really efficient. Most Boba lists are 2-ship. We saw Sloane do really well. Most Boba lists don't do great against Separatists, and when the Separatists show up, you can match up dodge all you want, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. A lot of the Imp Ace lists kind of hunt Boba. Vader's really strong because he has Afterburners and Extended. We see Whisper or Soontir or Echo, other aces in Imperial, because we see the only sort of drop-off we saw in Imperial was in LA, but I think that had the least amount of Ali's world archetype, or just imp aces in general.
Right. And then when they came back, they immediately perform again.
Yeah, they immediately perform, obviously, in different variations. We saw more Echo and Soontir plus Vader than Whisper in Grand Inquisitor plus Vader. And then, obviously, we saw the success of Sloane and the Bombers. So we're talking auto damage. We're talking stress, stressed out. Where Boba, maybe has only that Contraband Cybernetics for the one turn. Fen Rao's been very, very absent. We saw that was a lot of pillar piece to bring some high power damage that just has too many variant swings that just, throughout a whole day, 1 or 2 times out of 6 games, he just has a variant swing and there goes Fen. All right, Boba, please carry, or, whoever's partner with Fen. We're seeing more of the efficient swarms of Scum performing better, with the Sikhs really being the new stars of that building block of those high count Scum lists that utilize not even just one type of cannon. We've seen all types. We've seen Tractor, we've seen Ion, we've seen Auto Blaster, and varying types, whether it's Octocons or Nicholas Gods variations, and a few different ones in between. And those being as successful as they are, maybe there's just less. People generally don't gravitate to swarms that often. They're generally more difficult to fly if you're not doing a strict formation style. And generally, if you try and put yourself in a formation style, more times than not, you get caught out, flanked. You just got to be much more careful. So it's it's an interesting transition period. I can't really put the one single nail in the coffin on this one as to why we see that less success with Scum, besides just some people figured things out more and some of those pieces are being brought less, and what's successful isn't as popular as just a type of archetype people want to play. But what is successful is performing. We see that.
And then the next trend that I noticed is going back to the Republic. Terrible overall performance for your top 8 per faction. I mean, just really bad. And that is, you already talked about how there's a lot of people who like to play aces who simply shifted over to Empire. But like I look at the top 8 performance for a Republic, and I was looking at it, like that average number. I forgot what the lines are. I mean, it was pretty rough.
It's bad.
Yeah, bad. Correct. I don't know what it means overall. I mean, one of the ways I also look at this chart is the likeliness of, you can look at it if you flip it upside down, is the likeliness that you're going to see these ships in the cut. If you're practicing for the cut, you are less likely to see Republic than you are Empire. Is a very instant correlation that you should make when looking at this. And then the other one that I found interesting is, initially, Resistance doesn't look competitive, and then it makes, honestly, a huge jump into the range where it's like you got to worry about it. And what we saw was the rise of Rey. A lot of Rey play. I know that people have been playing 5A wings, which obviously are good, but just seeing Rey making appearances, she crushes. She punches really hard, and of course she did get into the final of LA, which is a great showing. But it's just really interesting, and I'm going to make all of this available for you guys to look at on your own, so you guys can look at it. And there's other tabs down here that have like the information more broken out. And then the last thing I did, it was just, putting these two, the top 8 in faction, and then the overall faction performance next to each other, so you can see what I was talking about. Your on average, your average player versus cut player, and what you would expect to see, in the field versus in the cut. Of course, one of the things we cannot deny is the fact that there also were faction prizes on the line for Space Jam. So I actually really thought it was cool that we had a pretty even representation of the factions when it came to performance. Of course, when it came to what you're bringing, that goes back to that top chart, which obviously I would say that it looks like that maybe Los Angeles was maybe the most balanced, maybe of the three. But yeah, that's our stats and information about Space Jam. Here's a opportunity for those of you in the chat to ask any questions specifically about our thoughts on the Space Jam as we work on our question of the week that we're gonna hit.
Dion,
right
could
now.
you do me a favor and
Yeah.
scroll back down to the comparison graph while we wait for questions from people?
Yes.
So one other thing I wanted to go over. So if you look at the other sort of in between factions, right? We talked about Scum, we talked about Republic, we talked a bit on that Resistance. It's interesting to see that the cut difference on Resistance dropped so much in favor of them as it went on. But Chicago and LA both had Resistance in the finals with me and Will, and then obviously Bryant and Rodrigo. And then we obviously, I think Bartos participated in Rome and LA. Did he? I don't know if he participated in Sydney, who's very well known for a very strong 5A wings player. We also had Dutch, who ran 5As in those middle events as well. First Order seems to have a decent capability of placing well, but then doesn't make it too far in the cut. I think it was only LA that had strong cut performances. And then we see Rebels is kind of just middling around there. Like they had a little bit here and there, like kind of even keeled across the board, it looks like. So what do we got from
so there was one was, what is the plan for the Champions of Space Jam battle? It's to be determined right now. I want to really get the prizes out before I plan anything else. Like my priority is the prizes, because people have been waiting from Chicago for a while, so I want to get that out of the door first. I want to do something. My original plan obviously was to do something, but one of the things I didn't quite think of when I was planning it was there are logistical issues with the fact that all 4 of our winners are in different time zones around the world, and it could be difficult to plan something super extended with people's calendars. We can try, but as of right now, there is no guarantee for that. Somebody had asked, why did a 5-1 not make the cut in Sydney? So I'll tell you exactly why. We figured it out. In round 1, there were 2 players that were having issues connecting to each other. D and Michael, our judges, spent a half an hour trying to get them connected. They tried both ways, connecting to them. It just was not working. So their decision was to give both of those players a bye in the first round. So what ended up happening is in round 2, we had +1 winners in the 1 win, 0 loss bracket. So it made it effectively as if we had 149 players. It made it feel that way when it came to the number of winners, but obviously when you start breaking it out, you end up with a possibility, if the math works out, which it did, of one player ended up being 5-1 and not being in. So that's that.
It happens, unfortunately.
Yep. Nomish Incan asks, what would you say are the most played lists? I can't think of any archetype that stands out. Maybe I missed it? A most common archetype.
I would still say Triple Imperial Ace, where the baseline is Vader, find a Phantom, and then decide if you want Grand Inquisitor or Soontir.
Agreed.
Or Fifth Brother with passive sensors and homing missiles. That is also dangerous. But yeah, generally in bases, Ollie Aces, we're still at least the most successful. We'd have to double check the numbers as to if they were actually the most broad and popular. Okay, Archetype Paladin. Sorry, someone else crunched some numbers in another Discord. I will get back to you in a second when I go through those.
Sure. Well, we're going to go ahead and hit our question of the week. Actually, Fastwalk Zero asks another question here. Is there a Republic list that has a chance of making Top Cut for next time? I think Republic has to find itself in the problem. One of the problems is I think Anakin is probably the best tool, but he's so expensive to build him out well that you're losing a lot to bring him. And then if you bring Obi-Wan, a lot of times you can't afford good pieces to have a big enough bid to fight against things like Boba Fett. Also, the Jedi don't like being swarmed. I'd be a little worried if this rise of Sloane comes up, because they're very action based with fine-tuned controls. That could be a problem. I mean, I want to say it's the Jedi, but I don't know.
I think the most common, so the most recent one I'm aware of was Richard Owen III flying Obi and 3 ARC 170s, but I think the most successful was Wolf, passive sensors, Proton Torpedo, Naboo, Anakin, Padme,
and Luminara,
and right? Luminara, I think, yeah. Mm-hmm. That basically that I-4 archetype providing 2 ships that hit really hard, and then 2 ships that are meant to subdue the attacks incoming. So just prolong the time that your ships stay alive, hit really hard. There's not really like a true end game ship in there. It's just, here's Wolf. He has a reroll and a focus shooting you forward. Right. Here's Anakin. He has proton torpedo with force. Here you go. And then Padme's just like, well, you're not going to do that much damage. And Lumarn is like, yeah, you're really not going to do that much damage.
Awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and hit our. Do you have something else about some numbers, Ryan, before we move on?
No, it was less popularity based. It was more cut rate based.
Got it.
So if someone's looking for the popularity, maybe that's numbers that can be crunched at another time.
Cool. So let's go ahead and look at our question of the week, and this one comes from Eric the Mandalorian. And he said, the community has built games like HOTAC, that's Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, Tabletop Simulator, Vassal, etc. Do you think the new way to play X-Wing, the X-Wing solo that FFG created and working on, is a waste of company resources, as we can usually find someone to play online instead of playing by themselves? Would you play X? And then there's a secondary part to this. Actually, let's do that, and then we'll hit the other one afterwards. What do you think, Ryan?
I think there's no such thing as wasted space in a game if you can expand on another way to play. Personally, especially when they've offered the ability for the community to basically help alpha/beta test this for them. So they're not putting in a ton. It's hard to say how many resources are going into this. We can't really comment on it at all. Just that there are resources going into this. There's thought process. There's development that's gone into this. But putting this also in the hands of the players earlier shows that they're willing to see how it goes with the player base through this testing process to be as polished as possible, so that when it does come out in full, it's closer to being finished at the beginning than later on with a bunch of updates. So as the players play it and give feedback, developers can make the adjustments sooner rather than later, and worry about people that do like the format, that have, think about this. X-Wing solo play is another tool to get new players into the game, which is a huge part of helping grow the game and allow FFG to keep making stuff for this game, because then they need to get people to buy into the game, and that needs new players. So it's all good, and you're adding more valuable ways to play the game. It may feel like it's a waste of space to some players because they don't value the solo play, but it's just where your values lie. It's understandable. It's your opinion. I think it's valuable if you can expand on it in any way that can help grow the player base. And that's obviously what FFG wants to do, as this is still something that is there to make them money and allow people to enjoy a cool Star Wars game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing you can't understate is there are definitely, well, yes, we're going to use Heroes of the Aturi Cluster as an example. Heroes of the Aturi Cluster does exist. But you guys know that there are the people in the community, and maybe you might be one of them who's watching or listening right now, who basically have the adage that I only use FFG official, period, and that's it, no matter what. Okay? Doesn't matter how much Dion has said you should probably use Yasby or Launch Bay next, you still use the official squad builder. Why? Well, because it's official FFG, right? Like there are people who will never find Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. Like that will happen. They could play this game for years and never even know it exists, or they hear about it and don't think that it's as good as it is. It's a great system. just because they want to focus on the official stuff. Like that does absolutely exist. And Ryan, I want to go back to the beginner play. Like it is another tool that exists now that we could easily give a player and say, look, if you want to just practice like chasing a ship around, do this. If you don't have anybody to play with at home, this is who you got, because not everybody has people available. And right now, it's a great time to get people into the game. If like, hey, maybe you have a friend who's interested, and obviously because of social distancing, you guys can't go to stores and things like that. I know some stores are opening, but it's just, again, another tool. As for the idea of a waste of resources, I find that wording really interesting, because I feel like there's a desire behind that. I don't want, the word that came to mind at first was like agenda, but that's not really the word. It's like that's saying like, where's my next wave of ships?
Yeah, well, so clearly, like, I get what you're saying. There's obviously something else they wanted in that most recent article instead of a solo play article.
Yeah.
That they're looking forward to something else potentially. I actually, particularly in the comments right here, Typo X-Wing saying our community, obviously in our community competitively, is less than half of X-Wing sales. This is value to young players that don't even know about the community. Think about, and that kind of went off a tangent in my mind. Think about a parent, whether it's young, preteen, teen, whatever, and they go with their kid to a local shop and they come across X-Wing, and the parent sees X-Wing. Now, currently, they gotta go, they read through and they're like, oh, this is a 2 to X player game. Do you have any friends that play this? Or, now the family has to consider, will the brother or sister, if they have a brother or sister, play it? Like, that whole conversation of deciding whether that parent should get that kid this Star Wars X-Wing game, of trying to find them someone to play with, that is now null and void. Like, with this solo play, you can give it to someone young and they can just play. They don't you want to find community, you want to build friends and relationships through X-Wing, but that barrier is broken down now.
Great. And then there was a second question here, and it says, would you play X-Wing if you had no community to play with? And he said, i.e. no online play. I feel like these are two different questions. I know they can be related. I'm going to take this one first. So it's interesting. If, let's say, the community didn't exist, let's say there wasn't competitive play, this game would end up being like a board game, right? Just like something that people play at their casual board game nights with friends. I feel that the structure of the game itself lends itself to playing with other people. Obviously, we're talking about solo. That does exist. But the idea of no online play might... I wonder if the question here also leading is like, what if FFG shut down online play? I'm gonna kind of add this on there. What if FFG turned around and said, Tabletop Simulator Vassal, no more. We're not providing an online venue. Because I do know that there are several players and people who came out of, I'm going to say came out of the woodworks, but people who I've become more familiar with now, who, since we've started doing the Space Jam, saying, Dion, Gold Squadron, thank you guys so much, because I can't go to events. I can't go to a store because of X, Y, and Z. And there was a full spectrum of reasons why. And I think that the community, meaning just like people that you can play with, makes a huge difference in the growth of the game. And me personally, if this is directed to me, if the overall community didn't exist, I probably would have still played because I had my friend who taught me how to play, so we probably would have played there. But would this exist? Gold Squadron? No, it wouldn't, because then there's no reason for it to exist, if that makes any sense. And that's my 2 cents. What do you think, Ryan?
So the real focus is no community play with, i.e., no online play. So I assume that was the focus for
Right.
online purposes, because obviously Gold Squadron existed before online play became the need to play competitive. Obviously our online play was supplemental before our lockdown, now as being the main and only way to play. So if we had no online play, I think not only would people find a way to, I assume this is potentially in a world where the lockdown is not in effect, because it can divert two paths, no online play. All right, well, that's unfortunate. I don't have the supplementary way to play. Now I will go out and play physically when I'm able to. That obviously is limiting for certain people. They don't have time to go out and do that all the time. Sometimes being at home and online is much easier to do. Solo play offers an opportunity to still play the game, but not play the game competitively. So there's that. There are other people, and specifically a local buddy of mine who has partnered with Patrick and specifically local buddy of mine, Robert Monroe, who are part of Recon Specialist, who they have actually developed a way to play using both of them webcamming their board and playing live with each other through those cams. It's a grid-based system where you can start your ships in certain ways, so it's a little more rigid than obviously the free-flowing X-Wing, but hey, someone else figured a way out to do it without needing a digital software as well.
Very true, very true. What do you think, Marcel?
Hey, buddy. So tonight was date night. I just got back from date. Things are opening back up. So took advantage of that. What are we talking about?
What would you do if there was no online play for X-Wing? Or what do you think would you play X-Wing if there was no online play?
You mean under the current environment?
Right now.
I would probably bother Kayla to play every once in a while. But overall, I think without practicing for something or having something to look forward to, we'd probably only play sporadically every once in a while. Yeah, I don't think I would play single player X-Wing very much. That's what you guys are talking about, right?
That's where we started from. Yeah. Now here's a question, Marcel. Now, I know it has for me. I almost feel like for most people, especially if those who get into the content, I almost feel like X-Wing. Oh, hello. I almost feel like X-Wing becomes almost a lifestyle. Like when it's active and doing it, it really is can become a strong part of people's lives. Let me know in the chat if you guys think that. But I think that the community, the events, obviously the existence of online play, it is definitely something that becomes ingrained in people.
Well, it's definitely it's definitely I think it's different levels for different people probably. But I think it's probably more overall immersive and takes over more portions of your life for many people than do other things. Probably because of the nature of the game, the original game, not like this online version, where you have to get up and meet people, get up and meet with people, and then get out of even outside of your own small community. Because you play games like I don't know, people play on World of Warcraft, or you play other stuff like that, right? And they play Call of Duty and things like that. They're still at home, and yes, they're engaging with other people, and it takes over their life. Sometimes time-wise, like the amount of hours that they dedicate to it, but it only does so while they're at home in their computer. They don't like it doesn't travel with them. It doesn't, maybe a few people might go to BlizzCon and things like that, but for the most part, it's contained. Where X-Wing and probably same thing with Magic the Gathering and other games that are tabletop and in person. You get up and you go and you meet with the people and yeah, I mean, I can't think of and Ryan, you can talk about yours as well, but I know that everyone that I know from my family and even my coworkers at every job that I've had since I started playing X-Wing knows about X-Wings and knows that that I'm involved and that I go out and that I do tournaments and people ask me, hey, how'd you do this weekend? Even people who don't care about X-Wing, they'll just be like, hey, how'd it go this weekend? So, yeah, it doesn't take over your life, but it becomes a part, or at least for some of us. And again, I think that the chat probably would have a better view because I think you, me, Ryan...
We're on the extreme end. We're on the extreme end of the spectrum, for sure.
Yeah, we've traveled around the world,
literally,
playing this stuff. Literally. So yeah, we're probably at the opposite end of this spectrum to some people, and we get exposed to the people that are at that end of the spectrum as well. That travel to worlds. That so maybe our view is skewed a little bit, and there's a lot more people who just play it casually and passively, and when they're not sitting down at a table, they don't think about it at all.
That's awesome. It's true. Well, Marcel, you actually showed up at the perfect time because you know what we're about to do?
Serenade me?
List of the week.
Oh.
That's right. And you're first.
So I gotta pick one?
No, you go first. You're doing the scum list. Here we go.
Oh, so I'm just making it up on the spot.
On the spot, baby. Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. So we're gonna
all right. Well, bring it up and I'll see what's going on here.
All right. So this list
Can
comes.
you blow it up a little bit more?
Yeah. I got you. So this list comes from. I lost my notes because it's underneath this thing. Give me a second. Sorry, people at home. Helping out Marcel. So this list comes from Danter Minator. Danter Minator. It said, thoughts on making Justero shoot extra with all these abilities. So we have Justero with Justero, by the way, is the M3A, the Kirax fighter that whose ability says after an enemy ship suffers damage, if it is not defending, you may perform a bonus attack against that ship. So we have Justero with Mag Pulse warheads, Tirani Kolda with nothing.
Yep.
Captain Nim with dorsal turret, Dengar gunner, seismic charge, proton bombs, havoc title, and trajectory simulator, and then Captain Seevor to round that out, the little jamming fly that he is. What are your thoughts here?
All right, so let us do some stuff with this.
There's one thing that I don't think works in this squad that just kind of comes to mind. The Mag Pulse doesn't trigger Justero's ability.
It doesn't trigger the ability because it's still defending.
Yeah.
So let's get rid of that. Yep, cut that out, and let's do something that does work, which is snapshot on Tirani. And where this will work is it might trigger his bullseye ability. So the bullseye ability is not necessarily while defending. The bullseye ability is after defending anybody who's in there. So they've already defended, and it's after they're defended. So the bullseye ability will trigger Captain Justero, and that gives it the ability to trigger on high initiative aces that might be able to, after they move, reposition out of the way. So it'll catch them on that first move. And then let's get rid of Captain Seevor and replace him with the Seek that likes to go boom at range 0.
Gargor.
Yeah, let's get a little Gargor in there. And let's get rid of Captain Nim and switch him down to Soul Sixer. All right. Let's see what's in there. So for Astromech, let's put the who should have, somebody should have Wrecked R5DK. Probably Tarani.
I think it depends on how you set up. Maybe. And this is for anybody who's wondering. That's so that you can trigger Gargoyle's ability.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's leave it for there for now.
Okay.
Let's change. We got a lot of points now. So let us change that proton bomb to a proximity mine. And let's change Dengar crew to let's leave it in there. There's nothing else that has Dengar gunner in there, right?
No.
Okay, so let's put the illicit, the 2-point illicit. Contraband. And let's put that on Tarani as well. Contrabands are good. So that leaves us. And let's throw a let's throw an auto blaster. Wait, do we want to do anything? Is there any put the on the Astromech?
Mm-hmm.
Put Genius on Soul Sixer. And take Dengar and well, it's nice that when they shoot Dengar you can roll and the whole thing. I get it. But let's put I need 1 point here.
I mean, you have space for contraband here. Oh no, you have one.
You already have contraband. Actually, Deadman's. No Deadman switch. Because Deadman switch would be no. Because I mean,
actually, that would actually trigger his ability.
Yeah. Put Deadman switch out there. So throw him in range 1. So after he dies, at the same initiative that he gets pulled off, the ship that he is at range 1 of takes a damage, so then he gets to shoot again when he dies. So as long as the ship that kills him is at range 1 in his arc, he'll be able to shoot twice that turn, plus give the auto damage from the Deadmans. So now you got 2 ships that want to joust, at least one of them when it's about to die. You can trigger his ability with the bullseye twice from Tarani, or not twice, but one of 2 ways from Tarani. You can also trigger the ability from shooting at Gargor with Tarani and the critical that goes through. You can also trigger with a proximity mine, a seismic charge, or Dengar.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can also trigger it off yourself if somebody kills you at range 1 of yourself.
Excellent. There you go.
Maestro at work.
Marcel, start looking at the Rebel one too. So while Ryan does this one, so we'll tag team.
I was gonna do the Rebel.
Oh, you're gonna do the Rebel one right now? Sorry.
Yeah.
Start looking at the Republic one. We'll tag team that last one all together. All right. So next one comes from Jude Allen. It's a Rebel list. And his prompt says, I love the Ghost and I love Dash. Can y'all help make Dash broken again? Thanks.
I'm going to say no to that second question. I don't want a broken Dash in this game, but I will help you with the list.
All right, so we start off with Dash with Lone Wolf and Outrider. That's it, sitting at 110 points. And then Hera Syndulla with Collision Detector, Dorsal Turret, Saw Gerrera Crew, and the Ghost title for flavor.
So going with the, I'm bringing a lot of 4 dice attacks and make them as strong as possible. So I think obviously Saw is something you want to keep on Hera. For for now, we all recall Lone Wolf Dash being a good thing. Lone Wolf has lost a little bit of its value when you have to have another token maintained for defense, assuming that, I mean, obviously you want Lone Wolf to maybe proc for offense, but with 4 dice, 1 reroll just probably isn't going to cut it that often. So let's drop Lone Wolf, and let's drop Collision Detector for now on Hera. So I think Dash, specifically with Outrider, is actually another strong candidate for a crew card I've been very high on in the Rebel Alliance, K2SO crew. Because after you fully execute a maneuver, if you move through or overlap an obstacle, you may remove 1 of your red or orange tokens. So Dash can use K2SO in the system phase to gain a calculate, ergo a cheap force, and be assigned a stress token. Dash could either do a blue, which Dash, not a ton of blues, but can still do it, or execute its plethora of whites and just make sure you go through an obstacle. Easy peasy. Big base, lots of obstacles. You brought big obstacles anyway, so why not? And then for Hera, we have 3 points left. Let's make sure she also gets target locks by equipping passive sensors. So we're there for her to move at I5. She can utilize passive sensors and Saw Gerrera for the most modified attack she can produce. And then Dash, likely trying to move in position to just lock, and already has the calculate from K2SO, so that way you have a 4 dice shot similar to Anakin Skywalker in the Naboo, where you have 1 force and a full target lock for reroll. So as modified as 4 attack dice as you can get. We're not here to modify our defense. We're here to hit you as hard as possible, so you die first.
That's you dead, I win. Awesome. So you end up with Dash, K2SO, Outrider, Hera, passive sensors, dorsal, Saw, and the Ghost for flavor. And our last list here, we're going to work on it together, comes from Psych J7. Again, if you ever want to submit lists for lists of the week or questions of the week, go ahead, post on our Discord. You can type !Discord in the chat to go ahead and join there. Or if you're watching later or listening later, just go ahead and click the link in the description down below. So the list is, in celebration of receiving my Silver N1, I wanted to make a themed list around Padme that might be competitive, that could be competitive. Here we go. So we have Obi-Wan Kenobi with Foresight, R2 Astromech, Delta 7B spare parts, Padme with Juke fire control system and R4 Astromech, and Anakin in the Naboo Starfighter, Baby Annie, with Predator, passive sensors, and proton torpedoes. The second half of the prompt says, I'm not entirely sold on Obi-Wan or Anakin, but wanted to see if this would work as a pseudo ace build. So, I mean, guys, one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with the direction to go with this one is I feel like Psych 7 is asking for 2 different things. He wants a like a competitive ace list, but then also wants theme. I mean, these pilots seem to make sense for theme. I don't know. I guess I don't know what the theme is. Is the theme like prequels? I mean, we're already in the prequels.
I guess the theme is Obi, Padme, and Anakin in the prequel, like the battle or something like that. I mean, those are the main characters in the initial, and actually, those are the main characters in the series, in the prequel series. The 3 main characters, and you know. To make any list, even any thematic list, competitive, the Republic is probably one of the best lists to be able to do that, primarily because they have ships that have free actions and regen. And these ones, Obi-Wan's, the Force is basically free action. and then of course the Naboo fighters. So the first thing I would start off with is throwing just getting some points available for that. You know, get rid of foresight, get rid of spare parts, get rid of fire control system, Predator, because Predator and Protons don't even play together. They don't work together. Predator is only with primaries, and then throw R2s on Padme and Anakin. Throw regens on there on both. R2 on there. It's on instead of R4, yeah. And that actually takes you to 199, but you have 3 ships that are regen. You know, 3 ships with R2, 3 ships that have either a soft, focus, a passive focus, or free evade. You have Padme doing what Padme does, which is limiting how many focus results you can modify, so her juke becomes more powerful on her than on other ships. And Anakin is just after Obi and Padme have put a little bit of probably cleared your tokens, maybe took some shields down, Anakin can punch hard with passive sensors. And again, Anakin will have basically what amounts to a calculate, an evade, and a target lock in this scenario. So again, is it top end of competitive? No. Is it competitive to the point where you are going to win more games than you lose? I think so, because anytime you have defensive-minded ships that have multiple actions, that have regen, you're always going to have an opportunity to win. You might not win those games by a lot. You might be winning like 36 to 20-something point games if you're not putting out enough damage. But Obi-Wan can punch, and passive sensor Proton Anakin can also punch.
All right, Ryan.
Did I change the whole list? Sorry.
No, that's fine. All the ships are the same. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to generate it again and ask Ryan, is there anything different that you would do?
So I mostly agree with Marcel. I think you got to get down to the core. Get rid of Predator, get rid of fire control, foresight, spare parts canisters, R4. Get down to the base, regen R2 with Delta B on Obi. We can leave Juke on Padme for now, and the passive sensors Proton. And that leaves with 15 points. I think the double regen is definitely a good starting point. I would probably at least prioritize regen on Padme. I don't know which one so my thought process is it something to consider to either leave one whole regen droid off for a larger bid, which really pertains to Obi mostly, or Anakin can take a talent. You can make him really scary to leave alone. And what does work on proton torpedoes is outmaneuver. You can make that Anakin. You cannot ignore him. Granted, if you also put the regen droid on him, he's 70 points. If you take the regen droid off Padme to put it onto him, it's probably a little too much. But I mean, Obi-Wan could be really, really aggressive on the flank, and Anakin on the other flank, and really force your opponent to choose. Outmaneuver proton torpedo is basically a wedge proton torpedo if you get the outmaneuver trigger. So that would be my only variation. I guess, man, if we took Juke off of Padme and outmaneuver, we're sitting at the same 15 points, and we could prioritize the R2 astromech on Anakin and no Juke on Padme, and that would leave us with an 8-point bid, which could be pretty valuable to put sense on Obi, even if it leaves you with 3. Probably Anakin's more of in a jousting situation than outmaneuver. As much as that sounds cool to set up, you only have 3 ships, and even Rick has a hard time outmaneuvering stuff. He's not on a 4-ship list. And then Padme, I mean, yeah, you're losing a little bit of that juke punch and token stripping potential for the Anakin proton torpedo, but we haven't seen the investment of juke as effective on Padme in the past. Since because you have I-4 ships might be more valuable to make sure they have either blocking potential or Padme has arc when necessary.
Cool.
So I'm going to go with the sense variation and everything has regen.
All right. So, like so?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. And the only other variation that I came up with, it basically borrows both from Ryan and from Marcel. It kind of meets in the middle, and that is you take off the spare parts, you get sense on Obi-Wan for foresight, you take R2, you put that on Padme to balance out the points, and you keep juke there, and you end up at 199. So it's in the middle between both of Marcel and Ryan's suggestions.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but you can also always just put the calibrated on Obi as well to get a ton more points. But at that point, you're definitely just tickling the opponent.
Yeah. I guess, Dion, what you could also do, and I know Marcel's a big fan of this, you have sense. I don't know how much fire control system's going to do, but maybe intimidation on Anakin might be a better call with that sense as well. That would essentially work like a crack shot. You'd be at 200 though. Maybe drop fire control. Yeah.
All right. So that
I know Marcel's had success as a fan of intimidation on Anakin. So.
Oh yeah. So there you go, Psych J. You got a couple of options there. Hopefully, you enjoyed that. So. Today's show touched on a lot of different things. We talked about Space Jam. I'm looking forward to what continues to evolve. Make sure you guys continue playing. And before I forget, I put it right at the top of the notes and almost forgot to say it. I got a shout out here for, I got to make sure I say the name right. Yeah, for Miles. Okay, so his father, Chris, his title, his screen handle is Chris from Lancaster, so I'll say that one. So shout out to him and his son Miles. According to Chris, he said his son Miles really likes our show. He's a big fan of all of us. So I just wanted to give him a Gold Squadron hello. Miles, keep playing X-Wing, buddy. And if you have any questions or lists that you would like us to look at, have your dad send it to us, and we'll do a little list of the week for Miles. All right, so Ryan, do you have any shout-outs before we wrap it up for today?
Shout out to everyone who joined us for the streams, for Space Jam. It was great to commentate for LA, play at Chicago. I heard the other 2 events that I didn't get to participate in much capacity went through great success. But if the audience isn't there, Dion doesn't have people to show it off to. So thank you guys for being here, for having fun, for enjoying the new craze marbles. That's apparently the new thing. Probably need to make a marbles t-shirt now, Dion, for GSP.
Probably, yeah.
And obviously diverting from the audience to you. Thank you, Dion, for putting everything together. I know you put a lot of hard work into this, and also during a time in which your personal life is really busy with your whole apartment thing. So big round of applause for you. I'm pretty sure everyone in the chat is clapping as well. So extra claps for them to you.
Thanks, Mo. Marcel, any shout-outs?
Yeah, quite a few.
Hit it.
So shout outs to all my opponents, 6 opponents from the Sydney. I had a great time. And it started off in great fashion with another final salvo This time I ended up getting the lucky dice on that one. 6 very close matches. Not one of them was. I think at going towards the last round, I was 4-1, and I was the very last MOV wise of 4-1 because every match was either final salvo or won or lost by like 3 or 4 points. So a ton of fun. I ended up losing against Voss, somebody that was the Sloan.
Niels Voss.
Yeah, Niels Voss. And I also lost against the guy that he was playing against, the 2-ship Vader Rexler one. Lost against that one again. And not again, but I lost that one in round 6. Ton of fun. Shout out to June. He's not watching. He's not going to watch, but I still want to throw a shout out to him. Turned 19. So I have a 19-year-old. Oh, my God. I'm getting old. And shout out to Kayla. Mwah. Big kisses over there. Just for... No, not the bunny. She's showing me the stuffed bunny. Just for... I don't know, just being supportive and me geeking out for an entire weekend and letting it happen. Now I'll get the bunny out the way. She's trying to put the bunny in the picture. Yeah, my shoutouts.
All right. Well, I had fun today. Hopefully you guys did. Thanks for watching, everybody. Gold Squadron